This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is once again that time, the time you have been waiting for all week, all month, probably all year. It is a time of joy and jubilation, a time of laughter and light, a time of insight and information. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight of all nights is your chance to hear that most precious and most rare of all commodities. That's right, the truth. You can hear it tonight straight from the mouth of the man who is the most unique of animals, a counter-jihad chatfest host. That's right, you know the man I mean. It could only be one man. No one else would be this courageous. No one else would be this crazy. And so it is my great pleasure and privilege tonight to be able to bring him to you, ladies and gentlemen. The one they're shaking their heads over, the one they have nightmares about, the one they are befuddled, bemused, baffled, and bewildered over, the most suspicious of all refugees. Ladies and gentlemen, the putative champion of freedom, the self-proclaimed stalwart of stalwarts, the unheard voice of the voiceless, the peerless, the fearless, the cheerless, the beerless. You call him Jamie, we call him Chatfest host. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Jamie Glazov.
Thank you very much. I love those introductions. Ladies and gentlemen, the introduction was given by our great guest this evening, Robert Spencer, the director of jihadwatch.org. Robert Spencer, you could have gone in another direction in terms of career. You could have probably been a great ring announcer for fights.
Yes. And I'm actually hoping to schedule a bout between you and Gerd Wilders very soon.
Excellent. Can you do one more introduction? Let's do one more. Can you freestyle one?
I can do this. Here's Jamie.
Okay, fantastic. I know that a lot of our viewers want...
You need a band, a house band, with a theme song to bring in the show. And then you banter with the band leader. It's a talk show host requirement, really. If you're going to do this gig, then you got to hire a band.
This is completely true, and I'm going to bring this up at our next...
I've been working on
our next staff meeting.
And I could be the band leader.
Okay. And moving on from the world of great entertainment and humor to the serious issues of our time. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest this evening, Robert Spencer. He is the director of jihadwatch.org, and he wrote a very profound article the other day on the beheading in Moscow. It was called Muslim Woman Who Beheaded Child, Allah Made Me Do It, and the teaser was, and he did. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, there was a beheading of a small child in Moscow the other day. This Muslim woman in Russia was walking around with a decapitated head of a small child. Robert Spencer, let you take it away for now to introduce this horrifying development to our viewers.
She was actually walking around in a Moscow metro station. And what's strange about it is that she was there for about 20 minutes before she was arrested. And you got to wonder, somebody walking around for 20 minutes with a severed head, screaming Allahu Akbar and proclaiming herself to be a terrorist, and it took them 20 minutes to arrest her. I think that's odd in the extreme. But in any case, she was indeed screaming Allahu Akbar. And once she was in custody and they're subjecting her to a battery of psychiatric examinations, she kept insisting that Allah had ordered her to decapitate the child, and that she did it, she said, in revenge for the killing of children supposedly by Russian forces in Syria, fighting against the Islamic State. Now, the thing is that the Quran says, if anybody assaults you, you assault him in the same way he assaulted you. In other words, an eye for an eye, or if somebody hurts you in one way, you hurt him in the same way. And so the Islamic State rhetoric is that the Russians, as well as the Americans for that matter, are killing children in Syria. And thus, she's justifying her killing on the basis of that Quranic verse and saying that this is what has to be done because they're killing our children, we have to kill theirs.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Let's go back now and take this one theme and issue at a time. This murderer's name is Gulchehra Babakulova, and you have to excuse my pronunciation of Russian names because I'm only from Russia. And she went to a Moscow metro station with a severed head, as we're saying, of a 4-year-old child, Nastya Meshcheryakova, and she was her nanny. And as you said, she's screaming Allahu Akbar. So Robert, I looked into this, and she's screaming Allahu Akbar. She's Muslim. The Quran teaches, I think it's 47:4, in Surah 47:4, smite them at their necks.
And the verse I was referring to was 2:194. If somebody assaults you, you assault them in the same way.
Right, and 47:4, the beheading. Her husband apparently, allegedly in ISIS, but I'm still mind-boggled about a motive. Could it possibly, maybe, I was thinking last night, be climate change?
Yeah, I think probably it is that Russia's had an unusually warm winter this year, and so it's very likely that she was driven mad by that, and by the prospect of crop failures on a massive scale, famine, floods, earthquakes, fires, etc. But of course, the absurdity of that does not prevent large numbers of people from holding it. And even though we're both mocking this idea, it's actually quite prevalent. And even in this very specific case, even as the newspaper reports explained about how she said that she did it because it was retaliation for the killing of Muslim children in Syria, and even as she said, Allahu Akbar, and I'm a terrorist, and all these other things, and that she did it because Allah ordered her to it, even the same news stories that reported those things also said authorities are searching for a motive. Mm-hmm. So it's as if it doesn't matter. I don't know what a jihad terrorist could do nowadays to get credit for being a jihad terrorist. There's nothing they do will make authorities believe them.
No, absolutely. And in your article, you report how the Telegraph reported that, quote unquote, no clear motive has been established. So look, Robert, we're constantly running into the same dynamic every time. And in an earlier article and in several articles, of course, you've made a very profound statement and imparted a certain perspective that it doesn't even really matter what happens in the future because our media and our cultural elites, they already have the story ready before they even report on it. So with the next Islamic terrorist attack, they just fill in a few blanks and then they say that this is not Islam, etc., etc. So
it's nothing to do with Islam and searching for a motive. And we must above all guard against attacks against innocent Muslims. And we affirm how important the important role that Islam plays in our society and the necessity to avoid all Islamophobia.
So Robert, look, so the purpose of this show is to get at the truth and to discuss things that our media and our culture simply are terrified and reluctant to speak about and to touch. So before, we only have a couple minutes left, unfortunately, let's just dig deep here for a minute. Why did this Muslim woman in Moscow decapitate this little child?
Well, I think the best and easiest way to answer that question is to go to what she said about it, and that was that she did it in revenge for the killing of Muslim children by Russian forces in Syria.
Mm-hmm. And she herself was screaming Allahu Akbar? Yes. And is obviously an Islamic connection. She herself said that she did it for Allah. Remind our viewers again, those that do not know, that there is an Islamic theological foundation, inspiration, and sanctioning to this beheading.
Yes, as you noted, the Quran says when you meet the unbelievers, strike their necks. That's chapter 47, verse 4. And you punish with the same punishment that you received. That's chapter 2, verse 194. Paraphrasing. And so the idea is that if Muslim children are being killed in Syria by Russians, then Muslims must kill Russian children. And that's what she was acting upon by her own
Right.
words.
And so, Robert, and so there's this reflexive denial, this instinctive denial in the West, in our culture, in our government, in our media, to always separate Islam from Islamic terror. And I want to conclude with that and the reasons for it. But before I go there, you know, I always think about one particular, well, I think about many, but there's one aspect of denial that I find very curious and intriguing. You hear this a lot, but not all Muslims do that. But not all Muslims do that, so we shouldn't say anything about this because not all Muslims do that. How does that fit logically? How does this pass Logic 101? All because a lot of people may not do something in a certain religion or culture and ideology. It has nothing to do with what the ideology actually teaches and why several or certain people, whatever degree of percentage, carry it out. In other words, maybe 1 million Muslims don't follow 47.4, but some do, and that's the issue.
And it's in the book. And so
Right.
it's in the book. Any Muslim can read it and think, this is what I must do. And this is the problem. People have, for some reason, I think that groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations and others, they intentionally obscure this point. But people have trouble separating the teachings of Islam from individual Muslims, and they assume that if they know a nice Muslim, that Islam must be nice. Whereas there is in reality a spectrum of belief, knowledge, and fervor among all believers, and some are very devout and fervent and knowledgeable, and some aren't. And so there are plenty of people who are Muslims who just don't pay attention to or may not even be aware of these teachings, but unfortunately the teachings still exist.
And in other words, the many quote-unquote nice Muslims that we know, and we both know many of them, are actually considered bad Muslims by Islam.
Yes, that's quite right, and that's why we don't see some large-scale moderate movement with tens of millions or hundreds of millions of Muslims standing up against and repudiating the jihadis. They don't, because they know the jihadis have the texts on their side, and they don't dare stick their necks out because they would be accused of being heretical and apostate, and thus their lives would be forfeit.
Robert, I know that this takes an hour, but you have under a minute to answer this. When we have an Islamic terrorist that decapitates a child because of Islamic theology, and she herself proudly proclaims she did it for Allah, etc., 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 and people in the West, the media, the government, the police, whoever they are, they're saying, we're still searching for a motive. We're still searching for a motive. What lies underneath this willful blindness?
Well, for whatever reason, it seems as if the government and media elites of the West have all decided that Islam must be protected and covered for at all costs. I have no idea why they're doing that, unless they think that this will create some sort of genuinely glorious multicultural future, but that seems so fanciful, especially in light of the immediate strife that the Muslim migrants have created in Europe over the past year. It's, I think, wishful thinking on a massive scale, or perhaps something much more insidious. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you do have to wonder when all of the political and media elites are completely sold out to this obviously false idea. I hope one day to discover what's behind it.
Yeah, well, this is what I've dedicated my life to, and I know that you also, you're being rhetorical to some degree, Robert, because we both know this is for a future program, but once these particular individuals that are part of leftist thinking, once they admit that Islam is behind it, their entire worldview, their entire identity, all of their agendas, all of their community, all of their social life falls apart.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed so. And it would show up their own policies as having been so reckless and wrongheaded to the point of suicidal that they're too dug in now. They've gone too far. They can't admit it now.
Robert Spencer, what an honor and a privilege it is to always talk to such an honorable and great noble man such as yourself. I'm not engaged in comedy here. I meant that. Best of luck to you, and we love you for all the great work you're doing at jihadwatch.org and everywhere else, okay?
Aye, sir. It's I could say the same things to you and do. Thank you.
I love these mutual compliments. We got to do this more often. Robert Spencer, thank you very much. And thank you for watching the Glazov Gang. If you like this show and appreciate what we talk about on this program, please go to jamieglazoff.com and support our program because it's a fan-generated show and we need your help. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel of the Glazov Gang. And we'll see you on the next edition of the Glazov Gang. Good night.